Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is remembering how to play and laugh with your fears. So this comes after, I'm very dusty today because last night was my hysterectomy party, which you were at, Bridget.
I was, and I'm dusty too. I'm not dusty from drinking too much. I'm dusty from late nights. I'm not used to late nights. We were like up until like well past midnight.
Yeah, totally. Yes. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I often think that's the modern day mother's hangover.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. It totally does.
Yeah. So we're a little bit rough. So we're going to keep this a nice, easeful conversation, but no doubt it'll be full of some gold, because that was what really stood out for me, was just the permission and the expansiveness that's available to us when we play with fear.
Yeah.
That we don't make it this, thing that we're walking towards full of trepidation and seriousness.
Yes.
How do we, find more availability within ourselves to move toward it when we play, when we, do the nonsensical?
I really love that you said that, because it was this hysterectomy party was quite revelatory for me. Like I have mentioned it on this podcast before, but coming up to this rite of passage, I knew I needed something completely different, because normally every other rite of passage ceremony that I have ever run across my whole life has always been really deep and being so thoroughly held by the great bosom of the women around me. That I have been able to just open and just, cry and moan and howl and just be so beautifully held, and therefore, integrate all of that as a process. And this time I just knew I needed something different, because this had been drawn out over so many years. And I kept, even as I'm organizing this rather outrageous rite of passage, because you would never see anything like this in the spiritual spaces.
No.
In the conscious spaces that you and I play in, Bridgie. And yet, this is why I want to focus here. This was one of the most conscious ceremonial processes that I've ever created. So we forget that there's equal consciousness in every action that we take.
Yeah, and that we need to really, like this example we're about to dive into, really invites us to again expand your understanding of spirituality, because spirituality exists in every place and space, right?
Yes.
It doesn't look like this new age version. And that this collection of women who came together from very different backgrounds, some who were extremely uncomfortable, and others who were like, yep, this is amazing, I'm all on board. The depth of revealing that was possible through the portal of fun.
Yes.
And, like the most un-PC stuff.
Completely un-PC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was beautiful. And I met I sat next to Lisa Corder and she you had her there. And it was just amazing how quickly we were able to bond, because when you're talking on these subjects, there's no small talk. No. You are straight to the, the deep topics. You are, when you're talking about vaginas, you're talking about sex, and you're talking about your own experiences of initiation into this part of womanhood.
Yes.
Like, it's a great bonding tool.
Isn't it? Yeah. I really loved that. I really loved that too. So what I wanted to bring here was there are so many ways to work with, celebrate, and honor your fear. And that's really where we want to focus this conversation. I would love to hear Bridget's reflections and how it was for her as an experience, because I was facilitating my own rite of passage, which is also something I've never done before. Normally I go, this is what I want, and I find, or I co-create it, or, in some version put it together so it's not just me facilitating it. Whereas this time, I was very conscious about what I wanted and the vibe and the intention that I wanted. And I wanted it to be outrageous, like a bunch of old crones cackling around the fire about all of the shit that the younger folk and the men could just never know and understand. That really secret women's business that is full of that crone-like cackle. That was like, let's cackle around the cauldron kind of. It had to have this outrageous vibe for me. And so I had curated all of these processes for that. And even as I'm curating them and I'm kind of like bouncing them off Nick a little bit, and then I kept watching how I would judge myself for that lack of consciousness.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, oh, is this okay? Like, should I be doing this differently? Should I be more serious? Should I be entering this? Like, I kept meeting my old identity and way of processing and seeing women and women's work and experiences. And Nick was beautiful one night as he sat down and I said this. He said, Jules, you have so thoroughly cried and grieved and moved through every single piece of new information over years of this. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, I have. That's probably why I don't need that as a rite of passage now.
Because you've taken yourself through that.
I've taken it, and because now at this rite of passage, I have co-created now a husband who is the great cosmic bosom that I was seeking and outsourcing to groups of women. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that because you've got that holding present in
my day-to-day life, yes,
you're not leaning so heavily on women to provide that.
Yes.
And so therefore there's less of a depth of expectation on them, and it can be lightness, aspects of lightness.
And this is less backlog, because actually over this has been so many years of step by step by step by step by step, that each one of those steps, I've done that grieving, almost mini ceremonial, thing with Nick, just him and I.
Yeah.
And so I get here, and what I want to do, I actually want so deeply to see and hear and know and feel and touch and taste the world through the eyes of the women that I love, because none of us will see me, my experience, or the world the same way. And actually, I'm a bit fucking sick of seeing the world the way that I see it through my eyes. I'm a bit sick of myself.
And that's a really great point, because don't we all get really sick of ourselves and sick of
I'm sick of myself.
And sick of our own tunnel vision on how to see something. And so can I leap? No, you
go. No, you leap. No, go.
I want to leap to what was so great about, so essentially the dancing with the fears looked like you creating a number of different activities where you put out there
my deepest fears,
your deepest fears about going through this procedure.
Yes.
And who you might be, or what you may or may not experience in your body on the other side of this experience.
Totally. Yeah.
And so what was so interesting was that there was clearly, because women they kind of randomly took a little bead which had a corresponding number, which had a sheet that said this number is this particular fear.
Yes.
And so how many women did you have?
There were 22.
22 women. Okay. There was about 4 answers, I think, that came up.
Right. This was freaking crazy.
Yeah,
so I said this to Nick. It was the most bizarre. I had 20 fears.
20 fears. Okay. Yeah. So you had 20 in there. A number of women said, do you really have 20 fears, Julie? Or a couple of these just fillers, and actually you've only got 4.
Right.
Because across these 22 women, there was 4 that consistent fears that people randomly kept pulling out.
And even women going, oh, this is rigged. And they're like shaking the jar of beads. They're like 100% convinced they're not going to get that same fear.
Yeah.
And yet they pull out that same number.
And so the beautiful way that you had set this up was that in order for you to see this fear through another woman's eyes, you asked that woman to talk to you as if you were the woman who had experienced and lived that very thing.
So my worst, yes, I
Your
wanted
worst
them
fear.
to play out. My worst fear comes true.
Yeah.
How do you see me or women like me that have this? Like, how do you show me through your eyes? Like,
do you want to give an example of one of those fears?
Yeah. So there was I can't even think now. It's so funny, isn't it? One of the fears that kept coming up was a woman who will no longer have cervical orgasms for the rest of her life.
And so what was great about this was that you got to really experience so many different women's reaction to that fear.
Yeah, it was actually fabulous.
Because our fears can be all-consuming, and they can drive or dictate the way we see the world and think everybody else, has the same fear or has the same reality. But you're hearing from women who are like, I don't know if I've ever had one of those. Like,
yeah, I never had one of those. I didn't even know what that is. I think what I have is pretty great.
Yeah,
so
it's very fine.
Yeah. And I had another woman who said, but like, okay, these orgasms are the gateway to God, but God, spirit, soul comes through you, not you access it through a point in your body. So, and just, it was so beautiful to hear all of, like, just the best. It was the best.
That reflection of, all of these different 22 women of different walks of life with different ways of seeing the world, different ways of seeing their bodies, of seeing women, of seeing sexuality, all acted as little ways in which you got to re-experience, your long-held beliefs or your long-held way of seeing something one way.
Yes.
And so every little offering became like a little de-armoring for you around, like holding on so strongly to this way.
Yes, and just an opening and a stretching of perception, which actually I fucking love.
Yeah.
Because once again, I get sick of, like, I know how I think, I know how I see the world. It gets a bit boring. So to be able to stretch and think and see and open to possibility and opportunity that's outside of that by virtue of experiencing that through another woman, I actually think it's what women gift us all of the time. I just honestly, it was the best.
It was really beautiful.
It was really beautiful.
And hilariously funny.
Outrageously funny. Outrageously funny. So many things. Tell me like what your experience was as a participant.
Well, as soon as I walked in,
did you know what was happening? Like, did you have any idea?
I was just along for the ride. I was so pumped. Like, I was like, this is perfect. As soon as I walked in and I saw you and I saw you get up, like, I
was dressed up a bit.
Yeah. And you had like disco ball and you had like, 1970s, like 80s kind of font everywhere and like super garish.
Yes,
right?
It was.
And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I was like, oh, yes, I am here for this. And the first activity was, we all had to pick like a hat.
Yeah, a crown.
A crown.
Yeah.
Like a crowny hat thing. And we had to do it in like a lucky dip. And then we picked it up, put it on our head.
We played Who Am I?
And we had to play Who Am I? But it was Who Am I with a twist, because we all had
vagina names,
right? So like pseudonyms for vaginas.
Yeah.
And some of them were the most hilarious phrases.
Oh, seriously the best.
Like I have ever heard.
Yeah.
And so of course, then the next layer was, once the person got their name, they had to be known as that name for the whole night.
Had to be called as that name.
Had to be called that name. So if you're, saying, talking across.
You were Muff.
I was Muff.
It's all right. Just say, hey, Muff.
You were Pearly Gates. And like, what do you reckon? What was your favourite? Because there was like some.
Oh my God, I have to tell you two of my favourite. It's a little rude, so if you have
really
kids,
rude.
switch it off. Yeah.
Pause.
Right now. So my favourite of all has to be Cum Creamer. Followed closely by Fanny Flutters.
They were my two favourites. And then, I don't know, I quite liked Love Tunnel as well.
Yeah. So many good ones.
Oh, they were just so good.
So if you got it wrong, if you said that, so if I said Bridget instead of Muff.
Yes.
Then I had to get up in front of the group and read an erotic prose, which was, again, a lucky dip. You had to pick your lucky dip erotic prose.
Yes.
So just to listen, being a group of women where one woman is spouting erotic prose was also just one of the most magnificent experiences of my entire life.
Yes.
I just like fucking love the shit out
It
of it.
was like, it was like spirituality, like beautiful stuff mixed with Mills and Boone kind of.
Yeah.
Like that's what it was.
Yeah, it totally was.
It was so good.
It was so good.
Just a brief break to the podcast to let you know what's happening in our world. So in bridgetwood.life, you will find Reimagining Motherhood, which is a beautiful membership space where you can come into and really be held and seen in community of other women who are really seeking to expand themselves in motherhood and really be at that intersection of where conscious parenting and the whole woman collide. So it's not either or, it is this beautiful melting pot of the two so that you can really dig deep and expand who you are on this mothering journey. And what about you, Jules?
Is Queen School. So Queen School is now a online course with 4 full modules that you are self-paced and work your way through, combined with 12 months of really stretching that out as I help you really integrate, embody, and move through the blocks so that you can literally become Queen School in your life. So Queen School is all about connection, pleasure, sensuality, magnetic communication, feminine energy, and embodiment with me over now a beautifully integrated 12-month experience. So you can find out more at julietenner.love.
And then there was the badges.
Yes, I had badges.
Badges.
So badge. Everyone got badge, which we played in another game so that at the end they had all of these different badges pinned to them, and they were outrageous. Like there was all sorts of different drawings and pictures of yonis and vaginas. And there were like play on words that I'd made up with the CUNT.
Yes.
So it might be I'm not sure, we're on a podcast with again. So like the CUNT corn, which is, like a normal CUNT, only far more rad.
Yes.
There was like content and constipated and like all of these. I had all of these different ones. So at the end, A+ vagina.
Vagina was great. Yes.
So I'd made all of these different badges. And so again, it was a lucky dip. We were playing this game and instead of a drinking game, it was a badge.
I had this one. It was my pussy bites back.
Yeah.
Picture of like a cat. Like,
so good.
Oh my God, it was fun.
I had so much fun making them. I can't even do. Anyway, so yeah, we did the badge, which was again just great.
What that was a bonding exercise, because what it allowed women to see was all of the other women, because you got a badge every time you put your hand up for challenging experiences of having periods.
So again, it was totally serious. Like, can we talk about all of the shit that we have to hold and deal with while we have periods and blood and vaginas that tear and are cut and have prolapse? And like, I really played on that.
Yeah. And it was really beautiful because you like see all these other women who
in a room
with their hands up.
Right. You go, here's this really shamey in inverted commas thing. And then all these hands go up. Well, now you don't feel shameful anymore.
And you get to move that through your body, through laughter and through connection over just how fucking funny the badge was that you just got.
So fucking funny.
Oh, beautiful, actually, because some of the yonis were beautiful.
Yeah, true.
But I got a little bit too much art. I was looking for some more of the
funny ones.
Yeah, the funny ones.
Yeah. It was so good. It was so bonding. I can't even think now. There was several things. I had prizes for games. Oh, I made hysterectomy bingo.
Oh, that was great.
And we had find the CUNT word search. And, it was just completely fabulous.
And when you did preface it all with the fantastic sign on your door, which I inevitably missed, which was, leave your good girl and your Catholic education at the door, thanks.
Yeah.
It's like, you clearly set the tone for like what this was going to be like.
Yes. And what I loved was just to hear a room of women erupting with laughter. Lights my soul on fire. Like I just it carries me. It might as well be a church gospel because it like transports me somewhere. So to be in a room of women where there's no pretense because we're all talking about our vaginas and our blood and the complicated sex and all of the bits of womanhood that often we kind of just skip over because we're so spiritual and it's all so beautiful and also it's not.
Yeah. Or even for some women, I'm just not talking about it because it's so uncomfortable in my life, or that it's just a big elephant in the room. And for some women, like you could see them visibly recognizing, wow, like this is a whole, like I hadn't even thought about.
Yes, I loved that.
Right?
Yes, because part of it at the end was also gratitude. Like, what have you loved your womb for? And what are you looking forward to when you're no longer going to be bleeding? And that was so beautiful, because there were women at the end of that were like, I have never thought about that.
Yeah.
And about who I'll be and what my life will be. Yeah. And there were about 4 or 5 women there that are themselves Crohn's and no longer bleed. And so they became matriarchs in that circle, talking about their experience of living without blood.
Yeah.
And that was so fucking enriching,
wasn't it? Because you got to see a pathway, you know, in multiple different like pathways on the other side of that, of how to experience yourself and the potential there.
I fucking loved it. Especially, there was a couple that I just loved, but one of my beautiful friends has very close Celtic heritage, and so she really has complete reverence for the crone and has herself transitioned into the crone, and so she was really like just in love with the crone. And so when she was speaking, I heard, like, felt that. And my other friend, he was like, you know, I actually kind of feel like, in a way, I'm like, is this what men are like? Because I'm so even. There's no ups and downs and huge highs and huge lows. I'm just like, oh, this is life. Wow.
yeah. And like that was almost a revelation for her.
Yeah. I loved that. And I mean, did we even stop laughing?
No, I don't think so.
So it was like, seriously.
The only time was the word search.
Oh, everyone got very competitive. I know.
And
I was standing in the room going, I thought this would be funnier.
No, we were like, damn, I'm winning a prize.
I'm winning a prize.
Because we all wanted the vagina colouring book. Like, I was pretty dirty that I didn't get to colour in some vaginas.
It was so good. The whole thing was fantastic. And just to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and just belly roll and just play, like, be so like, here's my fear. That's what I was going to say before, no pretense, no like ego. There's like nothing, everything was melted away between that group of women as we laughed and cackled and howled and, you know, I don't know, squawked. I have no idea it was just absolute magic. And so I come to the other side of that and I'm just like so heart full with gratitude, going, oh, fuck, yes, this is what I wanted, was this celebration into this rite of passage.
Yeah.
I don't need to be with that grief in quite the same way that I have known it for the rest of my life, because I am living actually a completely different life to the me who so deeply needed that.
Yeah. So beautiful to be able to love yourself. A little bit like we talked about in last week's podcast, love yourself through that identity transformation in a way that says, I love old me and I love new me, and I'm not going to make either better or worse. It's just, this is my own transformation that I'm walking into consciously.
Yes. Oh, we played Cards Against Humanity with my 20 fears too.
Oh, yeah, we did.
And that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, because we got to bring nonsense like and complete like just perspective flips to those fears, you know, to what it's going to be like if those were to come true.
Yes. So, you know, I hope that you got a little bit of the vibe just by us having a debrief, but really what we want to remind you of here is in parenting, but can we just take a pause from the parenting conversation, the focus on our children, and just shift that light back to ourselves, because we are often the worst at play and celebration and lightness.
Yeah. And I think too, just as women, and, you know, many women get together and laugh about random stuff when they go out for drinks with other mums and stuff like that. But to actually intentionally do it around big life transition stuff was...
Because it was very intentional, even though it was very kind of, you know, funny and crude and all. It was, everything had a huge amount of intention. Did you feel that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay. It was definitely a journey right back around again. Like, we're going to look at the fear from this angle, and we're going to kind of dance with it here, and we're going to dip our toe in here, and we're going to tackle it from each of these different angles for you.
So glad
to get oh, it's like
so good for me.
Yeah, it allowed you to see it this way and then this way and through that person's eyes and that person's eyes.
Yes, seriously.
And, you know, sometimes we were laughing with it, and other times we were like, oh God, like when it Cards Against Humanity, right? And just, it's almost like you got to actually dance with it.
I so love the way you've articulated that, because it was exactly my felt experience.
Yeah, I love that.
like looking through a kaleidoscope. Like it was really this play and this dance and this, let's look at it from all of these perspectives and ways and play my body through it. Like I get to laugh. Like, don't forget, you can cry and you can fucking laugh in such an outrageous way that you lose all control of your body, the same as you do in a really big cry. And you're vibrating your tissues and you're softening and relaxing all of your muscles, same as in a big cry. And you're rolling around and you're touching and bonding and giggling and getting biofeedback from everybody in the room, like exactly the same as you do with an enormous, huge cathartic cry. Only this is the Crohn's version of that.
And I think, too, the entry point for some women can be safer.
Well, the 100, right?
Right, through laughter.
100%. So there was a handful of my friends who were there last night who I'm sure would not have come if it was, in inverted commas, a regular Julie ceremony.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
And yet the entry point for them made it accessible that they could come on that journey. And I actually love that because I think there's an equal consciousness.
So how does that, what makes me wonder too, like, 'cause how do you look then at the rules for other ceremonies that you
exactly, this is like radically transforming it. But I have no blueprint for anything that I did last night. I have no blueprint for it. I have never seen it done in the world. I don't know anyone that does it in the world. I've never been to a ceremony like it. I've never been to a hysterectomy party. This was me 100% taking all of the skills that I have cultivated over so many years and so many ceremonies and completely flipping it on its head and tossing it around and going, I'm an expert facilitator. How can I fucking rock this show in a way I never have before?
Yeah. Well, I felt it. Like it was powerful.
And I fucking loved it.
And to be able to hold it and be in it.
And I totally felt like that.
Like you kind of had to flip yourself from like, okay,
facilitator
to I'm experiencing this, I'm feeling this, I'm taking myself through it. I'm letting myself be taken through it.
I totally was. I think it was great. I really felt like I was like the master or the mistress of games. And then while they were being played, I just got to receive it. You know, like I set up the kaleidoscope and then I lay in it.
Yeah.
You know, like it was.
Yes.
So for me as a facilitator, I actually think it was one of the most, if not the most powerful experience that I've ever had as a facilitator because I fucking broke every rule.
And then in doing that, how liberating, because there's no one you're trying to follow.
No,
right?
It's true.
Like there's
never
no
been done before.
There's no dogma that you're judging yourself against. There's no rule book of how it should be done because there wasn't one.
No.
You're making it.
Totally.
Well, it's not even a rule book. It's just a permission giving. Here's how we might do this.
Yes. And the fact, I just love that I'm at this stage of my life where, you know, I can essentially just be legs akimbo with these group of women and be like, we're so cool.
Yeah.
We're fine. You know, like you can be awkward and because that doesn't bother me and I'm not feeling shamey and weird about it, I can hold you while I'm still in this experience. You know, like just from a facilitator perspective, fucking loved it.
Yeah, and to really like make okay
all of it.
On the one hand, the woman who's clearly having, you know, like her own inner shamey like vibe.
Yes.
And the other woman outside of the room who's like fucking loving it. Yeah. And that both of those can happily coexist.
In the same space.
And that there's no right or wrong.
Yes.
It's just women experiencing, you know, women and transformation.
Yes. Like even I keep thinking about Dildo Hotel.
Yeah. Someone had the name Dildo
Hotel.
Yeah.
And what was ironic was Dildo Hotel later shared to the group. She was like, you know, what is so ironic is I'm a dildo virgin. And here I am with the Dildo Hotel.
And that I don't know, can I keep talking about the whole story?
I feel like because no one knows.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That her husband many, many years earlier had bought a dildo for her and they were in a hotel and he had it under the bed. But I think she said something and he never felt comfortable enough to bring it out. So there's real meaning in the story of
consciousness. Right. Consciousness. And even erotic prose that one of my friends had picked out of the bag and she read ended in, you know, essentially this whole saying around, you know, I'm going to bastardize it, but I'm paraphrasing, I want to do to you what the summer breeze does to the cherry blossom, or it was something like that.
Yeah.
And we had these in-depth conversations about the cherry blossom.
Wow.
Like there was so much consciousness.
Like synchronicity.
Yes. And like the fact that we had 20 beads that could equally be chosen, and the same four over and over and over and over. And same, I had a Yoni oracle deck, same cards ones. Over and over and over. Like so much consciousness done in a completely outrageous, ridiculously fun, flirty way. Like it was just fucking lit my soul on fire. I loved it.
So good. Yeah, it was awesome.
So I really want to offer to you that don't forget, in the depths and the darkness and the struggle of consciousness and conscious parenting and doing this journey, that there is equal consciousness in the light and the laughter, and dare I say, even a greater degree of skill in being able to process and transform through that vehicle.
Yeah.
And not to think and judge if it doesn't look like ripped open, rip me apart, crying mess on the floor.
Yeah.
That there's no consciousness present.
Yeah. Or that there's not a stripping bare or
there's no catharsis. Yeah.
That movement and that transformation can happen in this energy.
Yeah. And I even had one follower actually today say, gosh, you're so good at celebrating. And I wrote back to her, yeah, but that's from years of working on that.
Yeah.
Like that's from years of work on the fucked up relationship I had to celebration, particularly self-celebration.
Yeah. So it's been part of being able to reclaim that or practice that. It requires amping it up.
Right. Like we even talked about at my 40th. It's the first party I'd ever had.
Yeah.
Right. Remember that rite of passage? And here we are, the other end of that year of me going, it's ready to celebrate myself. Come gather. Let's spend all night talking about me and my fears and my vagina. Let's do it all night. Yeah, like totally different vibe.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a lot of work though.
Yeah.
To get to that.
To value that.
Yes, to value me and my experience and make it worthy of the money spent, the time spent, the calling in of all of the people and the women that I love. So,
but the reality is that for every woman present, it was a gift for her to be there just as much as it was a gift for you to have her there, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, as a facilitator, I totally know that. As a friend, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was magic. Please remember that you can find more availability, as Bridgie so beautifully said, within yourself and the passage that you are traversing by bringing lightness, humour and joy.
And so how can people connect with you, Jules? What have you got coming up?
So I don't really have anything coming up because I'm having surgery next week.
That's true.
So I'm just in this beautiful holding pattern of doing my couples workshops and facilitating within the Honey Club Queen School realm. So if that is vibing for you, then get in touch at julietanner.love. And you, Bridgie?
It's all things reimagining motherhood at the moment. So we're traversing embodied spaciousness. So what are the ways we can practice that within our life? What are the ways we can build more of that into our world? And I dare I say it, bring more fun in, right? So find out more at bridgetwood.life. Remember to nourish the woman, to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietanner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.